Hey everybody, and welcome to the 1044, a weekly webisode and podcast from the editors here at CCJ, Overdrive, and Truck Parts Service. I'm James Gillette, and my co-host on the other side is Jason Cannon, editor of CCJ. This week on the 1044, what does the recent major hack on the U.S. government and major companies like Microsoft mean for trucking and for motor carriers? And how can fleets safeguard their companies and their sensitive data and systems from hacks like that and basic phishing attacks and other types of malware? We'll dive into that and more. So a quick note from me and Jason here about the 1044 and about our trucking media outfits in general. We kicked off this podcast in October of 2020, and we appreciate all of the readers and viewers who have tuned in and listened and watched since then. But we have a few exciting announcements before we jump into the topics around fleet cybersecurity. For starters, CCJ has a brand new look and feel, which you can check out at ccjdigital.com.
Yeah, a lot of people have been hard at work on it for a few months, and it's good to finally let people see what's been going on. My hope is that the readers are going to find the site a little easier to navigate with some tag-along benefits like improved readability, especially for you mobile users, and some faster load times. Overall, I hope everybody out there feels like the new format improves your reader experience, because that was the entire purpose. If you don't, shoot us an email, shoot us a Facebook message, a tweet. Just share your thoughts with us in any format you're comfortable with.
Yeah, and secondly, we're excited to announce that we're taking the 1044 in a slightly different direction. Any regular listeners or watchers out there know that Jason and I usually tackle a variety of topics each week, scratching the surface of each one just a little bit. But moving forward, every week on the 1044, we're going to use a new format, instead focusing on one single issue in which we dive a little deeper into. So we'll be bringing on new guests each week to dive into those topics with us, and we're excited to have you on board as we make that transition. And as always, we still welcome your feedback. Please shoot us an email, 1044trucking@gmail.com, or give us a call, 404-491-1380, and leave us a voicemail.
Yeah, the prior format was a lot of fun, and it's certainly been well received based on a lot of the emails and the tweets that I get every week. But I think there were a lot of times that you and I are just trying to pack too much into a very narrow window of time. Focusing on a single topic is really what's going to enable us to bring in a lot of guests. And I think for our audience, there's a lot of value in getting to hear directly from the people that you and I generally would just either quote or paraphrase.
Yeah, Jason, to that end, speaking of guests, you and I have been pounding the pavement the last couple weeks, by phone anyways, trying to talk to cybersecurity experts and those at motor carriers who can shed light on this issue of cybersecurity and trucking fleets. And one of the key takeaways I found most interesting in those conversations is that I think we tend to think of hacks as really sophisticated attacks by coders sitting somewhere in a dark room somewhere, and I'm sure there's an element of that. But a few sources I've talked to this week said most attacks on companies' IT systems are simply from someone clicking a phishing email or a SMS phishing text or something like that. And what that means for fleets is that they're likely most vulnerable at the driver level, meaning a driver clicks a link that they shouldn't in an email or in a text, and it offers a window for malware or ransomware to enter fleets' systems and then cripple those systems. So training drivers and other staffers on these issues truly is paramount.
Yeah, and doing my research for this, and doing my research is code for Googling, I found some pretty staggering statistics. Google flags 18 million phishing attacks every day. And Patrick Morley, who I talked to, he's Vice President General Manager of VMware's Security Business Unit. His company analyzes 1.3 trillion security events every day across its customer network. 1.3 trillion. That's more than the entire global population by orders of magnitude. Among today's guests on the 1044 include Kevin Linardic, who's the CTO for LTL and Final Mile TMS provider Carrier Logistics. He also has some pretty eye-popping stats, but he'll also share with us some tips and strategies that can help carriers guard themselves from an attack.
Yep, and we'll also have Chris DeMillo, who heads IT for the 500-truck Leonard's Express, and he was kind enough to share an experience that his company had a few years ago with a cybersecurity breach, and he has advice for other carriers about how they can ward off those attacks. We'll also hear from Chris's colleague at Leonard's, Mike Riccio. He He's the chief of marketing over at Leonard's, and he has some good advice as well. And we'll also talk to Chris Wolfe and Luis Rodriguez, both at the asset tracking firm PowerFleet. They're both experts on cybersecurity and prevention tactics that fleets can use in their own operations.
Well, first up, James, here's Kevin Linardic. He's going to detail some staggering statistics around cyber breaches.
95% of all cyber attacks breaches are happening because of human error, not because of really other ways. In fact, cyber attacks, I've heard in multiple sources, occur every 39 seconds, which is incredible. And nobody would even believe that. They want to get into your systems. Now, why do they want to get into your systems? Well, they want to get to your data. It's all about data. Usually, it's because once they have your data, they can hold it hostage. They could even use it simply to get to other people's data, your customers' data. I've seen many articles on where you've been hacked, but then all of a sudden you don't even know it. And in fact, you got a message from your customer saying, "Hey, I heard you got hacked," and you're like, "Wow, how did that happen?" So again, they really might not even consider you as the target, but again, your end customers' targets. And so again, people say, well, why do I care about me? I'm just this little transportation company. But again, your data is invaluable. And again, your customers are invaluable to them.
That's great stuff from Kevin, and we'll hear from him a little bit more in just a minute. For now, here's another really smart guy, Chris DeMillo from Leonard's, describing the attack that his company faced in 2017 and his and Mike Riccio's advice for other carriers in beefing up their own IT systems.
June of 2017, I can remember it like it was yesterday. And with Leonard's, we did experience a heavy impactful event. Now, from a financial perspective or from a data loss perspective, we were very fortunate. But we did have a significant disruption to our operation, and a lot was learned. If above all, we learned a great deal of what a compromise can certainly do. Disruption wise, right? We were compromised by a rather benign phishing attempt, and it basically brought our systems to a halt. We didn't know. It was first hard to identify what it was that was impacting our computer systems. And once it was identified, we had to go through the rigorous tasks of completely removing and cleansing our environment from client devices to server infrastructure. I mean, at one point we brought everything down that had that was plugged into an outlet. We were running on phone calls and paper notepads.
Really taught us was we were fortunate, as Chris said, is that it was somewhat of a benign issue that created, it wasn't ransomware, right? So we were lucky there. And really we were able to get people remotely and working remotely, kind of old school, right? Through well, at least we had cell phones and people were at homes and outside environments and working. So we were kind of doing the COVID thing before COVID hit. We were kind of forced to do that. Thought we were doing a pretty good job with things, and it really, in a weird way, it was probably a good thing that it happened, and that it happened, thankfully, to the small degree that it did, because it enabled us to really put together a more robust or more detailed continuing work plan should we get hit again with either a phishing attempt or, what would we do if we had a ransomware, so to speak, attack. And
we do believe it was an email user clicked on a link is kind of what we believe. And then that's all it takes is, you think about a protection layer, right? And you've got this you've got this protection suit, and I'm here in the safe bubble, and I go poke a little pinhole through there. That's all they need, and once that pinhole is exposed and open in your environment, it just floods. And then it was mind-blowing and scary, really. Thankfully, it wasn't ransomware, right? Their data that wasn't getting encrypted and then held for ransom for us to make a payment. It wasn't a situation like that. We believe, and after consulting with a security expert that we brought in-house to help us get through it, we believe it was a data mining piece of virus or software or malware that was going to be probably relaying contact data to go sell on some black market, right? Whether it be email addresses or some other type of either personal or information, right?
I think that it was assumed that the cybersecurity was an IT issue prior to that situation. And what that situation did was really bring to the forefront that it is everybody's issue. And that, not to be cliche, we're as strong as our weakest link, right? And really the beginning of it was just educate, and then re-educate, and then do some testing, right? That the IT team would send out a phishing scam that they created to see who would click on it, and then not to embarrass that individual, but then to have conversations with that individual in their department that say, look, here are the things that could create us a security breach that could really bring the company to a halt. These types of attempts are becoming way more sophisticated than they used to be. And that if you're not continually having this at top of mind or forefront in the conversation, at some point in time, you're possibly going to be compromised again. And as Chris said, everything is so automated today with our technology, from our paperwork flow, from our communication, from our, from location, from, information exchange between our customers, that there are so many different entry points that you've constantly, it's like Harry Potter. It is constant vigilance, right? And you just have to continue to educate. And I do think some of the publicity that's gone on with some of the large companies that have been penetrated, like Target and Visa and some of the other, there's been some recent transportation companies as of late that have been penetrated. I think that keeps it, unfortunately for those folks, it keeps it, so to speak, in people's minds that, hey, look, this isn't going away, and it's going to, and what, we're just as much a target, even though you wouldn't think we would be a target, but we are.
Really talked about it. We knew about it. We thought we knew about it. We thought we had sufficient protection. And again, we learned a lot of hard lessons, but good, valuable lessons in taking importance of this area of investment, either at a training and a communication level or at a software investment technical practice level, right? So talk about it, right? If you're not talking about it, it's already too late.
We also talked with Kevin about why drivers are a target, and here's what he had to say.
If you have a laptop and you're a truck driver and you're on an open Wi-Fi network, that's a big concern. So if you're a driver and you use a laptop and you're on an open network, well, you should always be using a VPN to connect to wherever you're going. All of your telematics and all your systems on board your truck, they all need to be using current security protocols. They call them TLS protocols and SSL protocols. So again, it's not only the drivers, it's the whole company's responsibility to ensure that everything electronic on their truck is current, up to date, using the best protocols that they can. They're not weak. They're not vanilla, and if they are, then they best be replaced. Of course, there's of course the other simple, obvious things from a driver. Certainly if they're not locking their truck and protecting their physical assets, they're looking for trouble. But there's best practices, and those need to be followed.
Chris Wolfe and Luis Rodriguez at PowerFleet also touched on some of those same points. Here's their advice to carriers on that subject, and more broadly, penetration testing that they recommend that all companies invest in.
Educate your employees. That's number one. I mean, usually most hacks, and whatever intrusions are caused from your employee base. They open the wrong email. And by the way, that's something I would suggest that because now they can your truckers can access it from their cab, right? And they're into your firewall potentially, and then accessing external websites on their device, which now they're bringing that to your site. So you really need to educate your web about phishing attacks. You have to say don't download things on the internet, especially not on company computers. And by the way, you can actually put technology on your computers to limit that kind of capability for drivers, for people in the office too. It's not just drivers, right? It's just anybody. That allows access or brings them, clicks on the wrong link at the wrong time. I think the SolarWinds thing is just, that's a horrific thing because they got behind and polluted an actual production system, right? That, like, I think Louis said it best, it was trusted. I would strongly suggest that if you're a CIO at a trucking company, that you have your systems penetration tested. And if you make any major change to those systems, new software that you put in, you have to include that in a test revision.
I mean, you need first and foremost to understand the risks, where you're exposed. And if you have a device that's outside your firewall and communicating, it's understanding that, and as Chris said, then start developing the strategies where to be penetration testing to kind of focus on those particular aspects. You got to also understand what you're trying to protect. The important thing to know is you're never done. It's just a constant process. As the hackers get smarter, the tools get smarter, and it just never ends.
Well, that's this week's episode of the 1044. As always, we welcome your feedback. Please send us an email at 1044trucking@gmail.com or give us a call, 404-491-1380 to leave us a voicemail.
Don't forget to check out ccjdigital.com. Let us know what you think about the new format. As I said earlier, shoot us an email, give us a tweet, Facebook message, any method that you're comfortable with. We'd be glad to read it.
All right, everybody, stay safe. Watch out for cyber criminals, and we'll catch you next week.